Welcome back on the mainland. I guess you just got back.
I did.
John Cadarette, it was great catching up. What the hell just happened? It was great. I just lost my screen. It's never happened before.
Make it clear that the technical glitch is on Ted's side, not mine.
Exactly. Just got back from our 50th reunion, and we unfortunately it was a 2 day action pack. We didn't get a lot of time to talk individually, but what I'd like to do and what we've been doing is circling back with some of our teammates and really talking about some of the highlights from the season, number one, but more importantly, some of the lessons that we learned from that season and how we carried those throughout our lifetime. And really, what I viewed as like what we thought in high school was an accumulation of some great athletes. We found out were some just great guys and some pretty high-powered intelligence on that team.
Yeah.
I want to explore, some of the paths that we took and some of the stepping stones to lead to success. So you came in, you were a St. Regis kid, right?
I was, yeah.
So that team, the 74 team, I think about a quarter of the players were from St. Regis. So it was literally right across the street or a driveway from Brother Rice. And it was kind of a magnet for athletes that wanted to go to Brother Rice.
Yeah, there really was for us no other choice. It was just like automatic. You were going to go there.
Yeah, and that's not the case anymore, but it certainly was the case back then. And that eighth grade team was kind of the core of the freshman team that came in 1972, correct?
Yeah, we were stacked pretty good. We had I know Don talked about it. We were 8-0, and we had Don and Warner and Cullen and Terry Simmons and so many guys that
Tom Henry.
If I didn't know, Henry was not a Regis guy. He was Holy Name.
Oh yeah, you're just talking about the St. Regis guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying that we were all on the same team coming in from Regis. Yeah.
Yep. And you were the second team that Dave Yeager coached. What was your indoctrination to Brother Rice and Dave Yeager coach team?
Well, I think my starting point is I think we all thought we were kind of hot shit coming from an 8-0 team where we beat up on the Catholic League. And then we got in there and we were humbled pretty quickly because there were a whole bunch of other good freshman players coming in from other places. And then Yeager, was whipping us into shape. And, for me personally, definitely got some comeuppance of like, yeah, there's bigger, stronger, faster people here. And I'm going to have to work just that much harder to be able to, be part of this team and hopefully be a starter. And, looking back, I think we all can agree that Dave Yeager was one of the greats as a person, but also what a great coach. And as we've said, I was so surprised thinking back on how he wasn't that much older than we were. And yet he was seemingly miles ahead of us maturity wise and molding us together as a team. So I have great memory of that freshman team, also undefeated.
Yeah. In fact, Don Hendrick's dad said of all the teams that he followed through Don's career, that was the most fun that he had watching a team play because it was just you guys steamrolled people.
Yeah. I was unbelievably fortunate. I played football for 8 years, and starting in 8th grade, I was undefeated. Freshman year, undefeated. Sophomore year, lost one, tied one. Junior year, undefeated state champ. Senior year, undefeated till the very last game. So over 5 years, I was on football teams that lost 2 and tied 1 game.
Yeah, and at the time, your team was the major underpinning of a 22-game winning streak. At the time, it was a record at Brother Rice for consecutive victories, and that started in 1973 after an 0-3 season. So, I continue to repeat it, and I'm sure you as well. You learn as much, if not more, from failures as you do your great successes, and it's
well, I thought of it as a culture of winning, but as I got older, really what it was a culture of working hard for a goal. And that really is what Coach Fracassa, Coach Yeager, and the other coaches taught us, right? And that this isn't just handed to you. What other schools were doing round the year workouts like we were, getting up and doing agility drills at whatever 6 a.m. in the freezing cold and throwing up in the
in
the water
in the winter,
fountain.
In the dead of winter at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah, right. Who did that? And weight training in the summer before people would do that stuff. And so, that really is what it taught us, not just how to win, not just to win, but how to win. And those are the things that we take forward with us. And you've probably heard me say this, but my theme of life, taken from Fracassa, repeating it, was happy are those who dream dreams and are willing to pay the price to make it come true. And my kids are sick of hearing that from me, but I do believe it.
Well, and you're living proof of it, right?
Yeah. So far.
Yeah. Do you have any vivid memories of the 74 season in particular?
Well, of those 8 years, that was the only year that I was not a starter. So I was just thrilled, honestly, to be on the team with talent like we had, because I recognized that we had people that were just, as we all know, next level people, so many D1 and great D2, D3 level players. So just to be on that team and be part of it, I was on special teams. So I ran down every kickoff like it was the last one that I'd ever get to do. And fortunately, because we got ahead so much, I got put in like a lot of the rest of us that year. And so for me, just seeing each week that we're gaining this momentum, and we'd go, those Wednesday mornings after driving like idiots to the pancake house, and then, paying for one newspaper and taking them all and reading about ourselves in the paper and our next opponent. And just, there was a momentum that was growing that we just felt like you couldn't stop this train. We were just going and getting better and better. And the camaraderie we built was second to anything in my whole life, honestly.
Well, and I think that was partly by design, because when Kevin and Tom and I got together before the season, we just said there's not going to be any hazing. That was kind of a big deal. The freshmen got picked on by the seniors. If you're a sophomore on the varsity, you got all the shit jobs, and they treated you like crap. And we just weren't going to allow that. And we had guys like you. I mean, I think one of your great skills, it just as a person, is you just have an ability to fit in. You can fit in with so many different groups, and I think that's just part of your personality. And we had very close relationships, juniors and seniors, on that team.
Yeah. I mean, well, kudos to you. I didn't know that till just now telling me that you guys had that conversation ahead of time, the no bullying, the no hazing stuff. And it had without me knowing it, such a great effect, because I didn't have a sense that there were juniors and seniors. They were just players. And, you earned your spot. It didn't matter what grade you were in. It was, you worked hard, and you were the best person for that spot. And I think that absolutely helped us all bond together, instead of being by year, which basically everything else we did in high school was by year.
Yeah. It's not funny. One of the most iconic photos from the team.
Funny to me.
One of the most iconic photos of, Brother Rice football history is this photo.
Yeah.
And just like in the NBA, the logo was Jerry West.
Yeah.
You're the logo, my man.
That's funny. I actually got to know.
It's interesting if you look at this picture, the way they chose this picture. Very few of us are in full face.
Right.
They're one screen, the other. One thing that is clear, though, is that we're all excited to had just one. And you and Len Lewandowski are the only really full face.
That's funny. Yeah.
Marty Fisher. And
I see Fisher under your elbow there. Yeah.
Yeah. 50 years later, suddenly emerges a second shot.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Didn't use that one. full on there,
Wow.
John. Now, did somebody cut off your index finger? Because I
Oh yeah, look at that. That's funny. Yeah, that is crazy. Um, the whole story behind this was,
there's
and I
the
think most of
reunion,
the guys know this by now, is that I couldn't see anything, and I
right?
was behind all you guys, and everybody was big,
Right.
and I couldn't see what was going on. So I climbed up on what must have been like the scorer's table, and and was standing on it, and it made it look like I was up there on top of all you guys, but I'm actually the guy in the back row standing up, and then they caught the picture like that, and it was just pure joy. I mean, we'd accomplished a goal, and we were all so excited about it, and yeah, so it's kind of, I'm a little embarrassed that that's me, because there's
Hey,
so
man,
many other people so
right,
much more deserving, but
right
uh,
place, right time, John.
right place, right time. I'll take that. Right, better be lucky than good, I guess.
Let's talk a little bit about uh, going transitioning from the 74 season, undefeated season. Now you're 160-pound guard, starting guard the following
Uh,
season as a
I'd say
senior.
165, maybe pushed 170 by the end of the season. I was working
Maybe
out.
maybe with your arm pads and all of
Yeah,
it.
okay, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I was the
that's
lightest guy on the starting offensive team for sure.
that
Yeah.
is a testament to you because the season before, I think that starting offensive line averaged 6'2", 220 pounds.
Well, I'm not sure we
And
were much behind it. I mean, I was right next to
Larry Clark,
Kachansky, right? And then we had Larry Clark on the other side, the other
right,
guard.
right.
And then, we've got guys like Simmons and Henry
Who
that
were
are
the
in there, and
tackles on
and
that team?
Matkins, Ralph Matkin was in there.
Sure,
Yeah, and so we had some big boys up front,
yeah, you
and
did.
heck, weight wise and size wise, the running backs were bigger than me when you got
Yeah,
down to it.
that's
I was
true.
blocking for Cullen, who was heavier than me, and Don, who was definitely bigger than me, and Warner, who was stockier than me, and so I
KC,
just look. I again, I was just so I would take any place I could be. I had basically been in all those other years a linebacker until I got to Rice, and then we had guys like Casey Ryan and Danny McLean. So that kind of went out, and so I just
well,
from that point on took anything they would give me, and was just happy to be part of it. And fortunately, I had some decent upper body strength, and they did. Coach Fracassa and Pops and worked out that I did a lot of pulling. I could block okay on
yeah.
on.
What's the backstory on this thing?
Wait,
I
Casey
rec-
sent this to me, and
is that Lenny Dillon?
no, that's a guy named Dixon Hall.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I remember Dixon Hall.
yeah, so
Yep.
this is senior year. We're in Florida,
Okay.
and oh my god! And after our reunion, Casey found this and sent it to me.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
and obviously, I didn't know anything about sunscreen at the time, or haircuts apparently, or bathing suits.
Well, it had to be. It had to be the spring of your senior year because
This is
you
spring of my
would not
senior
have
year.
had.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
all went down to Florida. We all by then had been accepted to college, and we were just screwing around down there. And I was just working. All of us were just working on getting the darkest tan we could.
man, I could not rock a speedo. I was.
I'm not sure I was rocking it either.
Oh,
My
well, you're
my
doing
wife
better.
had saw that and was
That's
having a
so
little fun
funny.
with me on it.
So, getting back to your senior year, you've just finished an undefeated season, 9-0, and I mean, you guys were on a roll, and the
Yeah.
expectations were that we didn't. We it was a reload because of all the talent that was sitting waiting for the opportunity. Guys like you, guys like Tom Henry, Jay McGlinchey, getting a lot more full time. So you go into that season with all the potential. Tell me about the your senior season.
Well,
What are your biggest memories from that?
it was just taking that mantle and taking it forward, and we were looking forward to the
I
first
just lost your
playoffs.
audio.
Really, you can't hear me?
I'm not getting any audio now.
Well, I don't know what's going on.
Hmm.
Let me just see if I can check my settings.
Let's
Sorry.
pause it here. I can pause it. Hold on. There we go. So, John, why don't we go over some of the highlights of your senior year?
Yeah, sorry about the technical problem there. Well, as I was saying there, the main thing that we were looking forward to was being able to have a playoff run because we had been coming off such a great season, and we, as you said, we're stacked with talent coming into it, and we really 100% believed we were going to win everything that we did. And even though we had some tough fights, I said this on the interview that we did while we were back together, but I got it wrong. I said that nobody scored on the first team defense, the 74 team. It was the 75 team. Our defense was insane in 1975. And we had, I'm almost sure this is correct. I don't think anybody scored on the first team defense. There were some like fumble recoveries or something like that, kickoff returns. And there were some scores after the starters started coming out later in the game when we had the score up, but I don't think there were any points against it. So with that defense combined with the offensive power we had, the stars we had on offense, I mean, we just had this sense of invincibility. We are going to win. And we're excited about the whole thing the whole way through. And, it was a devastating loss at the end. It wasn't in our mindset in any way that we wouldn't keep going all the way through to the end and just keep that winning streak going. But again, it was further bonding with guys going through something very, very, very special. We had played together the year before on that amazing team, and we had another amazing team, and it just kept getting better, stronger, and just some really fabulous relationships were built there. And
because of the ride, I mean, you had to deal with some major peaks and valleys, right? 74 undefeated season, state champs, and then to have all that expectation, and unfortunately, with a fluke play, being able to qualify for the first playoff.
Which is still crazy to me. We should have qualified anyways, but
yeah, that was nuts.
Yeah, that is nuts because I think we would have still won.
I think they only had 4 teams qualify. I think they only had a semifinal and a final.
Oh, really? Yeah, well,
per class, it wasn't a lot of teams. So
yeah,
if you weren't undefeated, you weren't going to get in.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, honestly, that was really hard for us to swallow. We really didn't expect it. We had won so many games. We had the expectation of winning. We have the culture of winning. We believed in each other. We had each other's backs. When we, weren't playing well, we somehow dug in and played harder. So that was really, really hard to take. But for the career I had at Brother Rice, the people I got to play with, the teams I got to be on, the coaches that helped shape me as a man, I wouldn't give it up for anything. It was the most formative time of my life.
I think most, if not all of us, would say the same thing. But again, in light of the subject matter, stepping stones, you go from Brother Rice to the University of Michigan.
I was like one of the only guys that there wasn't a lot of football interest in. I guess you can't teach size. I did get a letter from Kenyon and Oberlin, but I was even thinking of playing, and my dad came in and said, look, you're not going to make your living playing football. Go to the school you want to. So back then it was a whole different thing, right? If you had good grades and you did well on your SATs, you had a pretty good sense of where you were going. So I hand wrote my application at my table to the University of Michigan. I had no secondary. I only filled out one. I assumed I was going there, and naively, and fortunately got in early admission. And I had no backup.
Your dad was a dentist. Did he go to U of M?
No, my grandpa went to U of M dental school and became dean of University of Detroit Dental School.
Okay.
And my dad went to University of Detroit for dental school.
Gotcha.
And undergrad.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're off to Michigan and get into a very competitive business school. People will be surprised, undergraduate, it's not a big class.
Yeah, there's 40,000 students at Michigan when I was there. At the time I applied, you had to go 2 years of undergrad applied to the Graduate School of Business Administration, and they took 225 kids a year.
Yeah.
And then once you got in, you did 60 business credits for your last 2 years. You were cranking it out for the last 2 years. I didn't have a easy second semester senior year like most people did. But yeah, I was really fortunate to get in there, and it was something that has helped me throughout since then.
And also during that process, you met a core group of 7 friends. I think we've got a little shot here. Hold on. Here we go.
There we go. All right. So great story about these guys. So 3 of us are from Brother Rice here. And the rest were guys that we met at Michigan. So in there, you'll see, in addition to me, which you might not recognize, but I'm in the front with the full head of dark hair. And right next to me, that's Vic Ray. So Vic was my roommate at Michigan and a very close friend.
Gotcha.
And then behind me over my shoulder with the mustache is Kevin Duffy. So the 3 of us are Brother Rice boys, and the rest of these guys.
One of the St. Regis, right?
Yeah,
Duffy?
Absolutely. And he played on the 8th grade team with us. And then for whatever reason that I hassled him about a lot, because he's a big boy, he didn't play football. But I'm sure he would have been very good if he had. So the rest of these guys are now lifelong friends of mine who we became good buddies. They're the guy behind and next to Duffy went to De La Salle, played football for De La Salle. And I went back one year, I asked Coach Fracassa, and he gave me on an old projector and reel-to-reel. And he and this guy, Jerry Kowalski back there, came over to my house and we watched each other play. He was a linebacker and I was actually blocking him on a bunch of plays. So crazy stuff. But so that group there in 1981, after we graduated college in 80, in 81, we all came back for a homecoming game and over some beers. And most of us were either in grad school or starting careers. We were like, we're too good of friends. We need to do something. We love each other, man. And on the back of a napkin, literally wrote out the bylaws of what became the Rollicking Crew, which is a line from the Michigan fight song, Hail to the Rollicking Crew. And for 43 years now, we have had a boys trip. And the only year we missed was September 11. And these guys are all over the place. Jerry, who's now passed away, sadly, was in Europe. And we were in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Oregon, Denver. We had people spread out all over, and somehow or another, we managed to come together every year, do a trip. But what we also did, more importantly, I think, is not only have we stayed together as friends, but that very first year, we started the Rollicking Crew Endowed Scholarship Foundation or Fund at Michigan. And we put $50 in and gave it to the guy that was working for Procter & Gamble because he gave it and they matched it a little bit. But each year we've continued to contribute and obviously put more in, and we let it ride for 25 years. And we began giving out scholarships. And so we've now graduated 5 or 6, and we have 3 currently on scholarships. We have a fully
General
endowed
scholarships, or are they sports related?
They are academic scholarships.
Gotcha.
It's the university gives us kids who have been admitted and then have financial needs. And then we get to suggest, we don't get to pick. But we usually try to find somebody that has a good story behind them, that, just all kinds of stuff. And we get these lovely letters each year from the recipients about how it changed their life. So it's a wonderful thing. And so it's now big enough that it'll be there in perpetuity, and we're still contributing to it every year as well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing. And most of the guys know, unfortunately, Vic passed away in 89.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. He was he had Hodgkin's disease that wasn't properly diagnosed, sadly. And he fought it off. He was the MVP of the College World Series for Michigan on a team with Ricky Leach, Steve Howe. But he was a big hitter and a big arm in the outfield. Then he had to go through chemo and radiation and all that. Took a year off, came back, had a 5th year, played, got into med school, finished all 4 years at Wayne, and then passed away shortly after that.
Oh, what a bummer.
Oh my God, it's tough. It's tough stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so now you you got your undergraduate degree, and you just kind of plowed right through, right?
Yeah, I was one of those guys that didn't take a breather. I didn't even know what gap year meant back then.
Yeah.
And I think I was the youngest guy in my class. My birthday is November 29th, and the cutoff was December 1st. So I went all the way through, and I went to law school and studied and took the bar and was a lawyer at 24, and just kept my head down and kept running uphill as fast as I could, and went into the practice of law at a big law firm, got recruited around the country, and decided to come out here. I had a crazy summer between your second and third year. If you do okay at a good school, you get recruited for an internship. And I spent 8 weeks in Beverly Hills and 4 in Newport Beach between my second and third year of law school.
I was just going to ask, how did you end up in California?
Yeah.
I just answered it.
After that, I was like, I think I'll come back here. So then I interviewed with a bunch of other firms and came right out of law school. I had to get out here as quickly as I could. So literally kissed my parents goodbye from law school graduation, came out here, got a car, an apartment, started studying for the bar, and took off. And that was a long time ago, 41 years ago now.
So did you end up going to the same law firm that you interned
I actually went
at?
to a different law firm. Once I made the decision I was going, I interviewed with a bunch of different firms.
Gotcha.
And ended up going with quite a bit bigger firm, it turned out. Yeah.
So I want to find, what is the story with Hal Needham and an accident on the set of Cannonball Run?
That's a good story, actually. So this was one of my first really fun kind of Hollywood things. I was a litigator, and I had expertise in some insurance stuff. And on the set of the filming of the original Cannonball Run, the one where they had all of the stars coming in doing cameos, and it was the race based on a real life race that went from New York to California. During the filming of that, the Aston Martin DB5 stunt car, which in the movie had Roger Moore and Farrah Fawcett in it, had stunt doubles, and the guy that was driving went the wrong way. He went right when he's supposed to go left, presented the female stunt woman broadside. She was hit and immediately became quadriplegic, neck down, C3, C4. And she was a tall, blonde, pretty woman making good money. And at the time, a guy named Melvin Belli, who was the king of torts back then, got a hold of this case and there was lots of publicity and stuff. Somehow or another, a partner in the firm got me pulled into this, and I really hit it off with Hal. Hal himself is a stuntman who was one of the greatest stuntmen ever. He also did Smokey and the Bandit, all those. He did Hooper. He did all the Cannonball Run stuff. Ultimately got a Lifetime Achievement Oscar from the Academy, and is an old stuntman. And they were accusing him of being reckless when it wasn't him at all. But everything he had built up was at risk. So I loved this guy. We really bonded. And I came up with a crazy theory that ended up, I won't bore anybody unless somebody's an insurance nerd. You can call me later and I'll tell you how it all happened. But I had a eureka moment that came up with an idea that ended up getting him out of the lawsuit that allowed some money to be paid to the plaintiffs. Hal was insulated. They still went to trial, got a $7 million verdict that Hal didn't have to pay. And then I went after the insurance companies for not settling on Hal's behalf, made them pay Hal for bad faith. And he was so grateful. He was, he bought me this, my first fancy watch.
Nice.
Many, many years ago. It's very sentimental to me. And just we'd go out and have drinks, and he'd just tell stories. You just couldn't believe this guy was a ball buster. But that was fun to be involved in that and help a guy who had 8th grade education, who, really truly self-made guy. Mm-hmm. And people weren't taking care of him. They were just, everybody was mailing it in, doing their thing. And it was great to be able to get involved and help him with that.
How with your law degree, did you get into, well, it's almost like arbitration, isn't that what your specialty is?
Yeah. So
non-litigation settlements.
Yeah, you kind of advance it. So I did practice for almost 15 years. I was the partner at the firm I was with, and the managing partner at the Los Angeles office, and involved in tort insurance litigation stuff. And I found that most of what I did ended up settling. And so I got pretty good at the negotiation part of it and focused on that, because most big uglies don't go to trial because there's too much at risk. People want to resolve it after you get the discovery done. And I did a huge claim for Chevron. I did its worldwide environmental insurance claim and hired Anderson to help me with it. It was like, now I got this thing. How do I put this together? Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of trying to figure out what insurers owe what over 50 years. And that project worked out very, very well. And Anderson had just spun out Accenture and was rebuilding its business consulting group. So they made me an offer to come in as a partner and help rebuild that. So I went to Anderson and was there for I like to say 4 years and 6 shitty months. The 4 years were great, super smart people, did lots of good stuff. And then obviously you all have heard of Enron, and that kind of took us down.
Right.
But was the thing that kicked us in the butt. But in the meantime, while I was there, I had dropped my stripes as an actual lawyer and just put together my business and law degree and work on helping clients with big complex disputes and help them figure out the strategy for settling it. And then I developed my business model, which is surround yourself with much smarter people and take all the credit. And it's a model that can work if you can make it happen.
You're being very modest. As we go through your business career, you've been involved in some incredibly high-profile class action settlements.
Yeah.
Not the least of which is the concussion protocols for the NCAAs.
Yeah.
Who you coincidentally worked with Brother Rice alum.
Yeah, that was a surprise. So what Ted's talking about here is we got involved, and we often team up with big law firms that do the legal stuff, and then we do the damages analysis, the insurance work up, and then I work on the strategy and behind the scenes negotiations piece of it. And as we were doing, so the NCAA, at the same time that the NFL got sued for concussion, the NCAA got sued by basically the same plaintiffs' lawyers. And the court consolidated everything and had all sports, Division 1, 2, and 3, men's and women. Anybody who had a head injury was a class plaintiff. So at the peak of it, we had over 4.4 million class plaintiffs. And somebody had to figure out what damages go where, who owes what from the insurance companies over all the years that these were, that were within the class members. And a lot of you guys on here listen to this, we're class members. And if you haven't, you still can claim some of the benefits of the class deal we put together. But in the process of doing that, there was a big meeting in Indianapolis, the headquarters of the NCAA, and we're talking with a retired district court judge who was our mediator. And we're prepping for it around the table. And they introduced this guy who's the medical director of the NCAA as Brian Hainline. And I'm like, Hainline? I think I know that guy. So I'm like, are you Brother Rice Hainline? He's like, yeah. I told him who I was. He goes, I dated your sister.
Laura, right?
Yeah, Laura. And so we were texting her, and I'm like, Laura, you're not going to believe I'm sitting here with Brian Hainline here in the middle of this negotiation. So, yeah.
Fun. Small world.
Man, run into Brother Rice guys in all kinds of strange places.
So you go from one big case to another. You were also involved in the Larry Nassar settlement case.
Yeah, we got pulled into that one at Michigan State. That was, and all these, you look me up, you're not going to find me, which is good. This is part of what I sell, is quietly helping figure things out behind the scenes. But our team was the one that did the damages model for each one of the women that was molested by him. He's a very evil guy hiding in plain sight. And
actually my daughter, one of her best friends from grade school, was one of the survivors, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she was a high school soccer player, and he was recommended in the community as someone who could help her. She messed up her back. He
cultivated that, like, first of all, being the Olympic gymnast doctor, but he cultivated being the guy. If you have it, and he was a talented healer. A lot of the women that we interviewed said that he helped them physically ways that other doctors couldn't. But in the meantime, he was molesting them. It was just horrifying. A lot of them were too young to know what was and wasn't appropriate until one woman very bravely spoke out, and then the floodgates opened up. So we had to come up with a whole way of putting that deal together, and worked with a good team of lawyers. Worked a lot with Latham and Watkins. There's a team there that I worked with. And our firm developed a model for how much each person could get, and then worked with the insurers to try to get who's going to put what into the kitty. And then we had a series of mediations that ended up with, just by a weird coincidence, out here in Los Angeles. And we actually finished the negotiation and closed the deal out here in LA.
What would you say is key skill sets that you need to be a good negotiator?
Well, that's a good answer. I actually teach some of this stuff. First and foremost, you got to do your homework. You can't just go in and pretend like you know what you're talking about. You need to really understand the other side's positions and validate where there are positions to be validated. You can't just go in and say, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm going to pull you over. It's a different mindset than being a litigator where you're taught to win. For me, a win is we walk away and both sides are equally happy or equally unhappy, but the deal's done and it's behind us. And so you try to find out what the motivators and what the key things are from the other side, as well as understanding all of your strengths and weaknesses and being willing to tell your client or your stakeholders, as they say, sometimes uncomfortable things that they don't want to hear. Like, you've got some bad stuff here and you need to pay, and it's a lot more than you thought. And I can't tell you how many board meetings I had been in, and I'm not talking just at Michigan State, I'm talking at various other places where delivered that kind of message. But you get credibility with it, right? You at the end of the day, if you give the other person validity, I frequently will open up and take the rug out of people from underneath them by saying, I know what you're going to say, and it's this, 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 and this. And we may not agree on the value for those things, but I hear you, and I'm incorporating them into my thought process and our clients' decision-making and what we're going to put, and we're putting dollars on the table to address those. We don't agree, you want way too much, but so you're right away, you're creating some common ground. And without that, it just becomes a big fight. You need to find common ground. You need to hear the other person, and you need to just keep going. I can't tell you, my first really, really, really big negotiation, the opening demand by my client over my objection was $1 billion. And a very sophisticated Englishman in Lloyd's who wanted to send a message made an opening offer of $1 million. So we were only $999 million apart, and the point was made. And long and short, we ended up getting it done for several $100 million. But you got to listen to the other side. You can't be ridiculous.
Well, and you have to be viewed as an honest broker. And that comes over time. I mean, some of my stock and trade now is relationships with people who I've dealt with before, lawyers that I've dealt with, underwriters at Lloyd's, various insurers and brokers that have seen me work on other things will bring me in, even if it's not for their client. They'll just say, John can help put something together in a way that doesn't piss everybody off. I'm trying to maintain relationships almost all the time. When you have these people, these big, huge companies have got a renewal coming up, right? And you don't want to just piss off the carriers that they don't want to be part of the insurance company's renewal when the broker is trying to get the placement for the next year. So there's relationships there, and it's not just all out war. We bring everything to bear that we can. Sometimes we'll look at interlocking board directorates, and if there's people on both sides, we'll say, hey, these guys should talk to these guys. Because what I do, I'm no longer a lawyer. I can talk principal to principal. And I'm a businessman who used to be a lawyer. I haven't practiced since '98. I have an inactive license, so it allows me to get under the tent, so to speak. But reading over your CV on LinkedIn, you've presented, you've won a case in front of the California Supreme Court.
Well, that's when I was a lawyer.
Yeah. So I mean,
I got to argue. I had a case that I tried, and I got to argue in the Court of Appeal, and then it went up, got picked up, and I lost on the Court of Appeal, and then I actually got to do the argument and got a 7-0 reversal in my favor in the California Supreme Court. It's everything you see on TV. There's like they're way up high there to make them look bigger and intimidating, and your knees are knocking when you go up there, but somehow pulled that one off.
It's pretty impressive for a lawyer to speak in front of the Supreme Court.
Well, just to have the opportunity to, you can go all career and not have one that they're interested in. So, yeah I got lucky on that one.
So tell tell me about the behind the scenes negotiations with the NFL Players Association.
How much time do we have left?
Hey, this is long form, baby.
Yeah, this is long form. So, in my whole career, this is my favorite project I ever worked on. I just got lucky. It was right place, right time, and maintaining relationships. So, the guy who was the immediate past head or executive director was the title of the NFL Players Association, DeMaurice Smith, D. Smith. He was a Latham lawyer that I had worked on a project with back in 2001. The Ford motor plant at Rouge had a huge fire and blew up, and I handled Ford's insurance claim as a result of that. And he and another lawyer were handling what's called subrogation claim, going after the people that caused it to have the fire in the first place. And I was chasing down and getting all the money in for the insurers to pay Ford for the damage and for the loss of income. And we developed a nice relationship. Fast forward 8 or 9 years later, in 2009, Dee's now the head of the NFL Players Association. They're coming into a lockout year. The owners had made it very clear that they thought that the players had too much and that they were going to squeeze a number of things out of them, including they wanted 18-game season. They wanted to completely change.
They still want that.
They still want that, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted to change how the sharing of the revenues. They had just signed like a $4 billion TV rights thing, and they wanted to keep more of it. And so they knew they had the leverage. I'm not sure everybody knows this, but the players don't get paid 52 weeks a year. They play on Sunday, they get a check on Monday, and the owners know this. And most of these guys have spent it by Friday, and they have them by the short hairs because they're waiting for their next paycheck. So they figure once they lock them out, they're going to come to their knees because they need the money. Well, Dee was very, very strategic, and a friend of mine from Latham reintroduced me to him, told him what I was up to. I flew out there, we met, and I became part of a behind-the-scenes strategic team. There were a few of us that even other members of the NFLPA didn't know about, because I'll get into it in a little bit why. And we became part of a strategic behind-the-scenes team. And our main goal was to develop leverage for the players so that when they got into it, that Dee could negotiate from a position of strength, not just from as soon as they start canceling the games, they'll capitulate. So what we came up with was we drafted from scratch, never been before and never since, but we hand wrote a lockout insurance policy that after 2 or 3 games would start paying out so that the players would then be able to get paid. And we had it so it would be about 65% of their base pay while they're in a lockout situation. And so that takes the leverage away from the owners right away, because they were, they're
not missing checks.
Yeah, they're not missing checks, and they're not missing mortgage payments and those types of things. And the average NFL player's expectancy in the league is about 3.4 years. So
Right.
if they, and we had to be very careful not to let them know, this goes back to what I was saying before, actually the whole executive committee didn't know. Only a subcommittee of the NFLPA executive committee knew, because if the players found out we had this, ultimately, they may want to just sit back and not play for a year, get paid, heal, extend their playing career, right? So we had to be super careful about who knew, and I've never had confidentiality. Even other partners at my firm that I started, only a handful could I tell. I just couldn't let them know what we were doing. But it was a very strategic move by Dee. He was very smart to do this. It took us forever. We had to go to Bermuda, London, Switzerland, New York, pitch it to a bunch of different carriers who had never seen it before, explain American football to some people in Europe, and explain why we were never going to use it. The whole point is, if we have this, we're never going to use it, because it gives Dee the leverage to do what he did. And I don't know if you remember, but they did cancel 2 games in the beginning of the preseason to scare him. And I kept asking Dee when he was going to pull this out. And he says, I'll know, don't worry. And he did. And he told me the whole story about how he did it. And he used Tom Brady as a shill to let Kraft know that, hey, you better be careful. Dee's got his guys covered. Don't worry about it. And got them nervous. And it was a negotiating committee of Kraft, Jerry Jones, and who owns the Steelers?
Rooney's.
Rooney. Yeah, those were the ones that were the most
Art
influential.
Rooney.
And long and short, he pulled it out at the last minute, and they literally signed the deal that night once they realized what they were up against, and ended up getting a very good deal for the players. It's a lot of that is not on Wikipedia, but the story of it is, of the lockout season and what was at stake for the people. Yeah, it was by far. Ted, I was at one point, I'm in Gene Upshaw Plaza where the NFLPA is in Washington, D.C. I'm in Dee's office, which is Gene Upshaw's old office, filled with Hall of Fame memorabilia. And he picks up a football signed by all these Hall of Famers, and he throws it to me. I throw it to the guy, Dave from Latham, back. And we're going back and forth talking about strategy. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm getting paid for this. This is the greatest thing I've ever. It was. And as a result, they've been so kind to me. They've invited me to many Super Bowls. I've been their guest at Super Bowls.
I know, I've seen the pictures.
Yeah, and I got to go on the floor of the draft with D one year. It just was for a guy that's a football fan. It was just a dream come true. So just so happy to be part of that little bit of history.
Completing the circle.
Yeah.
Well, you don't rest on your laurels either. You've been involved in both you and your wife Deidre, involved in philanthropy.
Yeah, it's important to us.
Executive producing a documentary on sex trafficking. And you also established a family charitable fund. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people can do this. This is what's called a donor advised fund. And you can create this by, and I've been doing it for years, because just making sure we were going to have enough before things kind of blew up for me business wise. We were just planning to have this. And each year I've been donating appreciated stock into a thing called a donor advised fund that then is managed. And you can then from there make grants to any 501c3. And right. So we have actually not used that a whole lot. We've been just doing things on our own because that was the retirement plan. But we've been doing a bunch of other things. It's just part of who we are as a family. My kids too. My wife, I got to be honest, she's my social conscious. Yeah. I make the money and she gives it away. But she's also, I mean, obviously with the Rollicking Crew thing, it's something that's been important to me, and a variety of other things like that, where we've sponsored individual kids. We're going on a family vacation in less than 2 weeks to South Africa. I've never been. We're going to go to Cape Town, and then we're going to go to, the safari thing. And there's a brother and sister that there it is. That's my son I think that's the first Super Bowl I went to with him. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was also a 165-pound guard in high school, or
no, he was a 160-pound middle linebacker, captain of his team, and he made all CIF in California, which is the equivalent of all state, basically, because there's so many people here, they break it down. Yeah.
Harvard?
He went to Brentwood here, and then he went to UC Santa Barbara. He's a surfer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He got into Michigan, but there weren't waves in Michigan, so he didn't go to Michigan.
Yeah, there you go. And then there's your
daughter. Yeah, now my daughter did go Michigan. That's at one of the basketball games when they were making the run in the basketball playoffs. So yeah, she went to Michigan undergrad and then UCLA for law school.
Where's that, Staples Center?
Yeah, that was at Staples. Yeah.
So I got one last question for you.
Go ahead.
And this is kind of, what would you put in your eulogy? What do you want your grandchildren to remember you by?
Wow. Try to do that without getting choked up. First of all, I want grandchildren, so I hope they get busy soon. I don't know that they thought that Grandpa was a pretty good guy, a nice man who cared about other people, loved them, created an environment of security, love, and safety for them as a family, but also helped teach that you need, if you're fortunate enough to take care of other people, that we're a community. And if you have good fortune, you need to pay it forward and share that with other folks as well.
John, thanks so much for doing this. I know you've got a limited contract left, and then
Yeah.
retirement.
Yeah.
And maybe you and your son can head up to his alma mater, and we can get around at
Yeah.
Sandpiper.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right behind, right near you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my last year, it's going to be interesting. I know a bunch of the guys have already retired, but I'm done at the end of 25 and starting my glide path, as they say, trying to ratchet it down and hand off to the younger generation and taking great joy in seeing other people really take off and do well. So a year from now, I'll have lots of time to play golf.
You got an open foursome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations on everything you've accomplished.
Well, I appreciate you even be asked to do this. There's so many people on our team that have great stories, and we're fortunate in business like I was as well. So I'll be very interested to hear their stories as well.
Sounds great. Now,